channel's nearly dead. So I'll do a podcast. I am filled with dread. So just sit and see what you'll hear from me. Probably nothing that is of importance. Where's the old funk guy? Dead in his front lawn. Man, I'm missing him. Guess I'll unsubscribe. The live commentaries are gone. TF2, he has moved on. Starting to get major deja vu. Someone else did all this too. Another one unsubscribed. Another one unsubscribed. Another one unsubscribed. Another one unsubscribed.
Hey there everybody, and welcome to my new podcast, Really Awesome Dude Indexing Thoughts Until the Recording Ends, or the Raditude podcast for short. I know the first thing you're probably thinking is, isn't "da" recording 2 words? And to that I say, go fuck yourself. So, because I'm going out of town and I don't actually have a main channel video prepared to go up, I figured that I may as well just make a standard podcast to go up on my second channel rather than going up on my first channel. I did consider it, but I think I kind of want to get some practice in before I even consider doing something like that. I don't even really have an interest in it, but for now, this podcast is just going to be about me talking about whatever's been going on in the week. It doesn't necessarily have to pertain to TF2, but I will obviously talk and discuss about things that happen in TF2 just because it's something that I'm interested in, but there's really no limit. It can be about songs, it can be about music, it can even really be about current events, but I probably won't stray too much into that. It's mostly just about what I've been up to. So just starting off right at the beginning, the TF2 weapon blog post came out, and my first question for Valve is, why wasn't the Claymore changed? Can you honestly tell me that anybody out there is happy with what the Claymore is currently, the state it's currently in? If you don't know what the Claymore is, it was previously a Demo Knight sword which allowed the user to have an extended charge. So rather than the standard 5 seconds or however long the default Demo Man charges when he has a shield equipped, it would make it around 7 or 8 seconds. And it was actually a very fun weapon, and it made Demo Man much more viable in a lot of scenarios. Even if he didn't outplay a standard Demo Man, it was very fun, especially with trimping and running around with the loose cannon. But I noticed that they didn't touch it up. They changed it a year or two, or even more at this point. I've started to lose track. They changed it so that it doesn't do that anymore. It doesn't give you an extended charge. It just gives you some health back and some charge back when you get a kill. It's really just sort of a bootleg half Satoshi and a Persian Persuader, sort of like the love child of those two weapons. I'm not a big fan of it. The thing that really defined what the weapon was is gone. And out of everything I was hoping for the weapon blog post update, and even the update itself, I was really hoping that the Claymore would get reverted back to its original form. Now, Valve did say that it's not final. The blog post doesn't necessarily show every item, but I really don't think they had any intention, to be honest, of touching the Claymore. I did send them an email because they encourage people to, contact them and give your input on it. And while I did ask them politely to either explain their stance on the Claymore or to consider reverting it, I don't expect them to really touch it. And that makes me sad, but, spoiled milk. At this point, it's spilled milk. It's not worth getting upset about. What there is a pretty cool thing going on in the weapon blog post is the heavy change, the proposed heavy changes. Now, if you don't know much about heavy, what you need to know is that he gets nerfed a lot. Pretty much every update, Valve finds a way to nerf him. And as a heavy enthusiast, it's sort of just become standard for me to expect him to get nerfed. He is very strong in a pub environment, and even in a sixes environment with the ability to use unlocks, he is very powerful. But he is on his own, pretty boring to play. He doesn't have that much going on for him, and even then he does get countered by a lot of things. Loose cannons and huntsmen and spies, and even a good soldier can a lot of the times beat a heavy, assuming that there are corners and places to hide involved. And then you have to consider rev advantage and health advantage and things like that. But this update, they actually did not fail me. They did not let me down, because the big thing is that all miniguns now have a bit of adjustments to their 1 second penalties. So for one, revving up now starts the 1 second penalty for both accuracy and damage, rather than just shooting. And that just means that you can rev up and that will remove the penalty after 1 second. You don't have to start shooting to remove it. And another good thing is once that penalty is gone and 1 second has passed, you don't have to shoot. It doesn't restart every time you start shooting. As long as you're revved up, that penalty will be gone, which means you can prematurely rev up before a fight, and assuming that you wait 1 second before you start fighting, you can stop shooting and start shooting as much as you want without worrying about a penalty. And that's almost kind of like, the penalty's not there. If you can play smart, it will definitely still impact pushes and close fights. But I think for defending and for just playing sort of a smart, heavy, even pub heavy style where you play very aggressive, but you hide in spots where you're prepared for every fight, I think this will open up a lot of damage opportunity for the heavy. I'm sure we'll see how people react to that. From what I know, about a majority of the people who go on forums and stuff were happy with the proposed heavy change. I believe it was the least negatively reacted change of the entire blog post. That's based off of some statistic collected on FacePunch in a poll, which I'll try to have a link for in the description. But it's very cool to see that everybody is, for the most part, on board with the proposed heavy changes. I definitely am. Now, this didn't necessarily come without heavy nerfs. So the Grew Gloves, which currently speed you up but do less damage and mark you for death, so you basically take mini crits at all times whenever you have them active, they have been about completely rebalanced. There's no longer negative 25% damage penalty, so it's equal to fists essentially in a fight. You're no longer marked for death, which means you're no longer taking more damage when you have them active. However, in place of those things, you now have a max health drain of negative 10 per second while active, and once you take them off and pull out your minigun, that will regen that max health. Now, a big misconception that even I had when I first read it is this is not a drain of just your health. It is a max health drain, which means when you spawn as heavy, you'll have 300 health. When you pull out the gloves, you'll be at 290 and then 280, and it'll keep going down. It's much faster of a build at the beginning, but it eventually goes to negative 10 per second. And I think this is going to be interesting. This seems a lot like the first initial iteration of the Grew, which sort of had a very similar effect, where it would take about negative 6 health away. I don't believe it was max health, though, and that was sort of a big flaw it had, because you could sort of heal off the damage that the gloves did to you. But by doing max health drain, a medic can't heal that health. They can overheal you, but your overheal will still drain alongside your max health. So when you get to a mid, if you roll out with Grew Gloves, you're probably going to end up with like the health of a scout, or maybe like a pyro or something like that. I don't know the numbers for it, but it's definitely going to be interesting. And I can tell already that their intention with this is sort of to minimize on Heavy's ability to step in the generalist territory. If you've seen my State of Specialist video, I go in a lot more detail there. And it's basically when a Heavy can get to mid with full health and even overheal, all at the speed of a scout and the rest of his team, he is a force to be reckoned with. He is not fun to fight. Even I can admit that. He is very strong in that scenario. but this is a very good alternative or a workaround for that, where while you can still have that health or that speed on rollout, you will not have the health to really sustain as a heavy. One of the biggest problems was, when you have to fight that heavy on mid, what are you going to do? If you don't have a sniper or a spy, even then those are going to take some time. All you can really do is pester him for damage and hope that you do enough that he backs up. With a standard 300 plus overheal, it's very difficult to do that. But when you take him down to the health of a soldier, or, even lower, or even just a tiny bit above that, it's much easier to pecker him to a point where he can't really fight. Especially because the Gru will not regen damage taken, which means generally when you get to that mid, you're going to have to sit and wait for your health to regen. Otherwise, you're going to, be down a lot of health for the first fight. It's definitely a step in the right direction. Interestingly, they did not rebalance the disciplinary action, which sort of does the same thing as the current Gru gloves. And once these proposed changes go through, assuming they don't touch the disciplinary action, as they haven't talked about doing currently, this won't mitigate Heavy's generalist problem. He'll still be able to get to mid with full health. And this is a good step in the right direction, these Gru gloves. But if they really want to knock out this problem with Heavy, they're going to have to do something about the disciplinary action. It may be good to limit what boost they get, maybe giving Heavy a smaller speed boost, but honestly, I'm not educated enough in balancing to give a proper opinion of that. But as it is, assuming that these are the only changes going in game, which I find very unlikely, I'm sure other than the pyro ones, some of these are going to get tweaked. But if they don't touch the disciplinary action, then the problem that they're trying to deal with right now will not be 100% dealt with. It will be dealt with in a scenario where your team doesn't have a soldier, they don't have a whip, but otherwise, at high levels, it's still going to need some adjusting. Now, the eviction notice was also rebalanced, but it was more or less sort of a mini Gru. Same max health drain, but in half. They got rid of the damage penalty. Same kind of thing. The Fist of Steel. Now, the Fist of Steel did objectively get a nerf. You could sort of argue that the Gru and the eviction notice weren't necessarily a nerf. They're definitely less powerful than the current iterations of it, but they aren't, they didn't take the existing design and then slap on some more penalties, They completely rebalanced it, so it's sort of a different... It serves the same function of speed, but the Fist of Steel are the same thing they were currently, but now they have a 40% overheal reduction and a 40% healing rate penalty. I'm very happy about these changes because a Heavy is already a tank for damage. The Fist of Steel, frankly, make it pretty ridiculous, especially with overheal, and they seem to have acknowledged that. This should make it a bit more difficult to tank damage as Heavy. The main place I see Fist of Steel run, or at least my experience using it, was in Highlander, specifically on King of the Hill, or really just whenever you're facing a team with a very good sniper. The Fist of Steel was a perfect way to sort of always have your middle fingers up the air at the sniper, because you'll almost always be able to tank at least one headshot, and even a full charge. If you're overhealed, you could tank it. And a lot of times, it would just sort of make snipers have to ignore you, assuming that you played smart with it. This is definitely going to impact that. Now, the problem is, currently, Gru gloves are... The only thing that can really contest a Gru glove in terms of equipping is the Fist of Steel. If you're not using the Fist of Steel or the Gru gloves, you're missing out on a lot. They're very good utilities, and with this Fist of Steel nerf, that may actually push it out of that realm. It's not quite on the same level as the Gru anymore. But, with the changes to the Gru as well, I think they're still sort of on the same level. I believe you can probably still tank a couple decent headshots with the Fist of Steel. Not in a row. You couldn't tank like 4 or 5, but you can definitely still use it to eat that damage and help your team out. I'm very happy with the proposed heavy changes. Those are all of the ones we know of currently. They also technically rebalanced the panic attack to no longer be sort of a sneeze gun. It's more of just sort of a mega shotgun. But I don't believe that's going to affect heavy very much because the sandwich is still very king. I actually think it's sort of interesting they didn't touch any of the heavy specific secondaries. The DeLocas, the buffalo steak sandwich, which I was actually kind of expecting them to change. I'm surprised they haven't. And even like the family business, there's still nothing that can really fight the sandwich for that equip, that equip percentage. It's so good of a secondary, and I guess Valve isn't too worried about that right now. It's definitely something I feel like they're gonna have to deal with eventually, sooner or later. But for now, they seem to mostly just be giving Heavy some quality of life changes, giving some adjustments to the GRU so he's more in tune with his class role. So now if you want to have that speed, you have to trade off your health, which is very good because it keeps a balance in the game. I know that I am all for having fun as Heavy, but you kind of have to acknowledge that he's built specifically not to be good at pushes and a lot of stuff, but rather just be really good for defense. And I think this is a good way to make it still viable, for rolling out to mid, but holding it back so it's not a necessity. Both teams don't absolutely have to work around it and play it. There are a lot more blog post weapons that were changed in this, but the heavy ones were the only ones I was really interested in talking about. If you're interested in hearing my opinion on other ones, there is a VOD of me reading the entire blog post on my Twitch channel, but I'm not really going to go into detail on it here because, frankly, it doesn't concern me very much if it's not heavy. I play a lot of Scout in competitive, or at least back when I was actively playing competitive, and I was interested in possibly playing more Sixes Soldier, but that is not currently on the menu. So those are the heavy changes. If you want to see me talk about the other ones, watch the Twitch VOD. If not, we're just going to move on to some non-TF2 stuff. So less than about 3 or 4 hours ago, Weezer released their Feels Like Summer acoustic rendition. It was leaked, I believe, a couple hours prior, and I found this out through the Weezer subreddit, r/Weezer, but the person who supposedly had an available download for that leak never got back to me, so I had to wait for the official release, which was right around at midnight. They said they were going to release it on Thursday, and I was impressed that they didn't fucking lie. They didn't waste time. So if you don't know what Weezer's feel like why is there an acoustic version out? Feels Like Summer was a single they released back in spring a couple months back. I believe March or April-ish. And it had some mixed feedback, mixed response from the general Weezer community. A lot of people felt it was, quoting Anthony Fantano, very generic EDM garbage, that kind of thing. And a lot of people were overall not very happy with it. Me personally, I did not hate the song. It was not something that I hope the Black Album is overall like. It definitely feels kind of like Rivers Cuomo, the singer and primary, songwriter of Weezer. It was just sort of another attempt by him to make a radio-friendly song. But in my opinion, you really can't pretend that there isn't very good writing lyrically on the song. And, let me see the smile, stay with me a while. It's a good song. It's very, when it melodic, it fucking works, And if you've ever listened to their live renditions, where it's a lot more rock than it is EDM, Pat's actually playing the drums for those versions. It's actually pretty good. Obviously, you aren't getting the quality of a studio recording of it, but they've made a couple of versions of the song, and now they've released the acoustic. Some interesting things. is one, it's actually summer now. It doesn't just feel like summer. We're actually getting into summer rather than spring. Also, there are no more na 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 na. You know, they got rid of the na na nas in favor of just sort of picking the guitar, which I thought was an interesting change. But it makes sense. This song definitely has a summery vibe. You know, your endless bummer, picking on the strap. No hard drums or anything. Just sort of a cool, relaxed version of the song. And I really like the acoustic version. Feels like some are the non-acoustic, the standard version. I don't care very much. I don't play it, you know, when I'm bored. But when I listen to it, it's grown on me much more than it did on release. I will say, when the original release, although I liked the lyrics, the song itself, I wasn't impressed by. It felt like, you know, I was listening to the Chainsmokers. I'm very happy with what they've refined it into. They seem, I guess Rivers Cuomo specifically, seems to be kind of aware of how people feel. And while he's sticking to his guns and sort of saying, hey, feels like summer, I'm very proud of the song, I think it's good, and I think you should give it a chance, he's also sort of going, I acknowledge that people don't like that rendition of it. It was me experimenting. And I believe at one point he tweeted that he didn't really want too much autotune on the song, but some producers, I suppose, sort of pushed to have a lot more of it, and he fought as much as he could to hold back on that. So it's clear that he's not fully just trying to, you know, create a top 30 song. He actually has a emotional interest, investment into the song. So, you know, if he's happy with the quality of it, then I'm going to give it a chance. That said, the acoustic version is right now currently my favorite version of it. But the ending feels like some of the original. Stay with me a while. You know, that's always going to be it's hard to top that, I feel like. Most of the song I don't care that much about, but when you hit that end part, it catches me, man. So, you know, let me know your opinion is. There will be a link in the description for the actual acoustic release. It's just on their YouTube channel. And in general, I really like acoustic Weezer. I had The Good Life live at X97, I believe, off of Pinkerton Deluxe as my outro song. It's kind of the one everybody knows that, you know, I play in videos. So, you know, it's cool to see more acoustic from them. I was kind of sad with the deluxe version of White because there wasn't very much. You can't compare it to Pinkerton or even Blue Deluxe, which had a lot of live acoustic, you know, studio quality acoustic versions of the songs played live. They also had a couple of just sort of really killer one-off songs like, you know, Long Time Sunshine, You Won't Get With Me Tonight, Michael and Carly, stuff like that. Suzanne, very solid, just B-sides, and Weezer's always god tier at making amazing B-sides. Even Everybody Needs Salvation, by far one of my favorite Weezer songs. Well, it wasn't even a B, it was just a fan club release, and I actually have the vinyl for it, but it wasn't even a B-side to Everything Will Be Alright in the end. And I was surprised that they didn't make it a deluxe version of that. But, you know, I wasn't that impressed with the White Deluxe. And I know this isn't like the last few weeks. This is a while back, but this is sort of the best time to talk about it. I was cool with Fake Smiles and Nervous Laughter, Prom Night, although I think Prom Night was just a Japanese release. It wasn't deluxe. And whatever the other one was, you know, they were solid songs, but they weren't by any means a friend of a friend. That was it. I felt like they could have kind of bolstered out the deluxe a bit more. You know, it would have been cool to see some acoustics of like King of the. I guess we did end up getting the Spotify sessions, but I digress. Feels like summer acoustic, very solid song. It's good. You should listen to it. So moving on from Weezer is just kind of what's up with me. What's up with FUNKe currently? So if you don't know, about 6 days ago, I released Death of an Art Style, which is a video essay talking about just sort of the development of the TF2 art style over time. And the general reception seems to be pretty in agreement. There were some people who believed that art style isn't important. It's a very redundant thing to have a strong opinion on. People, kind of suck it up. Nobody cares. And and while I acknowledge that, yeah, to most people, it's not that important. And even in the long run, it's probably not something worth bitching about. But I do believe that it was worth informing people about, especially the mishandling of crates and cases by Valve, because while I've never gotten an item in game, I have attempted to contribute items to the workshop before, and I am friends with a lot of people off the Facepunch forums who do have items in game, and I think it was important for people to really know what's going on behind the scenes. Same with stuff like comparing the counterfeit Billy Cock to the banana hat. I feel like even if that's not, what are you going to do with that information? I feel like it's important for people to acknowledge, like, what is very specifically designed to fit into the game, and what was just sort of, hey, we need a reason for people to buy these cases. Oh, look, there's a wacky Halloween item off of the workshop. Let's add that as the highest tier. It's very deliberate. It's very intentional why Valve is adding these, outlandish items. And although you can have different opinions on whether they're, worth being in game or not, I think, having just a discussion about that development is important. But, to each their own. If you don't agree with my opinion on that, I absolutely respect that. Overall, I put a lot of effort into that video. While I'm sure a lot of people find that I have a unhealthy amount of obsession with sort of voicing my complaints about TF2, no matter how small or insignificant or irrelevant they are, I think that if I don't do it, then there's not very many people going to lengths to do that kind of thing. So regardless, I'm very happy with it, with the work I put into it. I definitely tried to up myself with the editing on it. One rule that I've been kind of playing around with when making video essays, or just videos in general, is to minimize in-game gameplay as much as possible. It has forced me to think very creatively with editing, and I won't talk about this too long because some of you may not care, but I found when I allow myself to just like record in-game footage of me just playing on like Badwater as engineer or something while I talk, it quickly sort of devolves into a glorified commentary. And while there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, I think, especially given the topics I'm talking about that people otherwise aren't that invested in, it's very important and much more impressive to sort of push myself with editing this, and following that no gameplay rule made me have to get very creative with doing visual effects on screen, using Source Filmmaker to create just sort of examples of what I'm discussing, and I hope to do a lot more of that in the future. Although I'm definitely not swearing off gameplay videos by any means. As I'm refining the style of my channel and things like that, I much more enjoy pushing myself in that regard. So for the people who sort of notice that I put that effort in on the Death of a Dart style, I do appreciate it. I know I may not respond or even like or favorite comments just to avoid, filling out the comments with too much stuff. It's very much appreciated, and even constructive criticism, people saying, I think you should have elaborated much more on certain points, and I think that certain points were a little, like, they weren't represented properly. I do appreciate stuff like that too, even if it hurts my feelings. So, if you've given me that, it has been read and it has been noticed, even if I don't respond. So, aside from just that video, I've also been playing some Overwatch. If you don't know, I generally sit around 4,000 in SR in competitive, which is right at Grandmaster. But when I did my placements this season, which I did on stream, I was placed around 3,600. And although I would say part of that is just because I kind of, I didn't exactly deserve to be placed exactly where I was. It makes a lot more sense to have to do a bit of climbing. I think part of that was because I played a lot of Reinhardt and support during my placements, which held back my individual potential a lot, just because I was, I wasn't really in a situation where I could, do a lot to minimize my loss as much as possible. But even though I was placed at 3,600, this week I actually got it up to 4,000. So I've regained my Grandmaster. I currently sit at 4,003, I think. I got up to about 4,026, but I lost that game, so I dropped down. But right now I'm at 4,003. You may not care about that, but I just think it's sort of important to bring up because this season of Overwatch competitive it's been a struggle for me. So after I kind of got placed at 3,600 and I was not climbing very quickly, I decided that I'm going to minimize playing Winston and Reinhardt as much as possible because those are the primary heroes I play for my competitive Overwatch Team Crossfade, which is currently inactive, but we should be coming back up in a month or so after some people come back because we have people on vacation and stuff like that. We're not currently scrimming or playing tournaments. We just got out of the Overwatch Contenders, which I made a video on, but people have been asking where it went. And upon request from one of my teammates who was not comfortable with the exposure in the video, I obliged in privatizing the video. So I have no intentions of re-uploading that until they're comfortable with it. And I don't really expect them to because they're a bit of a awkward person, but that's fine. That's just sort of, where that video had gone. But as I was saying, we played in the Overwatch Contenders. That was the last thing we did about 2 weeks ago. And I've just been solo queuing now. I've just been playing competitive Overwatch on my own. And one thing I've learned is that playing tank when you're solo queuing is, again, a very big gamble because you're putting a lot of trust into people that you don't necessarily know at all. And another problem I found with this season, aside from that, is that there's been much more throwing, trolling, and smurfing this season than any previous. And that may seem like sort of something that somebody who's just bitter that they can't get top 500 would say, but as somebody who's played in every single season, I feel like I have the right to say this. There have been many more people who are boosted and aren't comfortable playing more than just Mercy or a select amount of heroes, and it's very difficult to work around. There are many more one-tricks, such as Hanzo and Torbjorn, which is fine when it works, but a lot of times, when you're attacking and you don't have the right lineup for it, it can be very annoying to deal with. A lot of those people are Smurfs, who are people on their other accounts, and they don't care very much about winning, so they're much more willing to play in ways that make it, inconvenient for the rest of the team. And with this comes people who don't join voice chat, people who get into arguments, people who intentionally throw. This season overall has just been much more chaotic than previous ones. Don't get me wrong, every season has had its a fair share of problems, but I feel like I'm not sure what. Maybe it's just because the game has been around long enough that people are starting to more often abuse, the ability to make multiple accounts and, not take the game as seriously. And while I can respect people like playing what they're good at and maybe aren't comfortable being in voice chat or something, I feel like if you want to play in a competitive environment, it's disrespectful to not take it seriously as a team, joining voice chat, playing what's needed. If you're not comfortable playing something, play some quick play some arcade, and try to at least learn the basics, and always try to play what you'll do well on. but never demand to play on it and refuse to change off of it. I just think if more people followed that advice, everybody would have a much funner time in it. As for what my hopes and my goals are this season, while my goals have always been to hit top 500, which I never have, I maxed out at 4239 2 seasons ago, but that was roughly maybe 150, 200 below top 500, so I didn't make the cut. And I think top 500 currently is probably like 4400 or something like that. I don't think that I'm going to reach it, but I would definitely like to aim for getting at least place number 500. I think to get out of 4K and up to like 4.5, it definitely requires more than solo queuing. If you're going to solo queue, you have to play a lot and get lucky and be very consistent, which I wouldn't really call myself. I'd say when I have an on day, I can do a hell of a lot of work, but when I have one of those days where, I just have to, sit back and play Lucio and I'm not doing very much, I kind of just have to call it. So to really get that high, I would have to play much more than I currently do. And when I play a lot of Overwatch, I tend to stream it more, and I would like to keep that variety. So we'll see. I may just end up doing a week straight of Overwatch streaming or something like that. But that's what's been up for me in the Overwatch space. For TF2 competitive, I did have one of my friends asking me to ring or to sub, I guess, for an open team. But I guess it was because somebody was going out of town and they weren't sure if their current sub could make it. But it seems like their sub can play, so I haven't been contacted by my friend on that for a couple days, so I don't expect to. I'm otherwise not playing competitive TF2 currently. And while I had a lot of fun playing competitive TF2, I'm currently just waiting out to see what Valve's plan is for the next update. They said they were going to add placement matches. These weapon balances seem to be very directed towards competitive play. We'll see once they release if maybe that resurges my interest in it. If nothing else, I'll definitely try out the ranked matchmaking again. But as for playing in a official team like UGC or ESCA or a league like that, I don't expect to anytime soon. I'll be playing with my Overwatch team for now. That's it for the unnecessarily long Overwatch section. The next thing, and we're kind of reaching the end here, is the 4th of July, which is Independence Day, if you've never heard of it. But it's also my mom's birthday. And what we're doing for it is going up to Georgia, and this is going to cause me to be out of town for about a week, and kind of the reason that I'm recording this right now. So I have something to sort of sustain while I'm gone. And I'm leaving up on Friday, probably around Friday morning, and I'll be back about Wednesday, probably like in the evening. So while I won't be streaming any day after Thursday, I'm not sure when this podcast will go up on my second channel, but assuming it goes up before July 2nd, make sure you tell Voltroid happy birthday on July 2nd, because it is her birthday on that day. And I doubt she wants me to send people there or give out private information about her, but if you care so much, then I think her comments on her Steam profile are privated. Don't tell her I said it, but give her a tweet or something like that. Just a happy birthday, Also my mom, but I don't think she even has a Twitter, so you probably can't tell her happy birthday. I'll send the message. Just say happy birthday, Jody, in the comments, and I'll let her know. Alongside saying happy birthday, you can also give your feedback on the podcast. And if you want me to talk about anything specifically, it doesn't have to be news by any means. It can just be a question. You don't even have to comment it, and you don't have to do it immediately. You can just tweet it at me. I promise that I'll get to it. It can be something about me. Just ask for a story, an experience, an opinion. Anything is fine. But for now, that's probably going to mark about the end of the first Raditude podcast. I'm really happy that if you made it this far, assuming you made it this far and you didn't just skip forward, cunt. But that's it for now. I'll definitely be making more of these. And although like these things are generally pretty popularized these days, podcasts, I do think that they're cool. I listen to a lot of The Shaft, which is a a Minecraft podcast made by Dead Workers Party. They aren't active anymore. They are long since disbanded. Before that, they had the Control Point podcast, which was all about TF2, but that was probably like 7 years ago. So if you really want to go find some cool podcasts, I recommend them, Dead Workers Party. Critscast as well. And, Dane's The Gunslinger is also a fantastic one. Otherwise, you probably can find some of your own. Whenever I want to find a podcast, I'll generally just sort of look up interviews of people also the RNG, the Raja and Grizzlies podcast, which I've actually been on an episode. So if you want to go to them, you can actually hear more of me there. But in general, I completely forgot what I was saying. When I look for podcasts, I kind of look for interviews with people that I like. There have been, and I don't remember what the podcast was. There's somebody that has done interviews with Dimitri Martin, Bo Burnham, Louis C.K., three of my top comedians, my top favorite stand-up comedians by far. Those three. I think it was like Joe Rogan. No, not Joe Rogan. Basically, what I'm trying to say is if you're looking for more podcasts, I definitely just recommend looking up interviews with people you like. RNG also has Uncle Dane and a couple other community figures. If you're so interested in just seeing more in the TF2 community, if you're interested in hearing more of me, obviously my main channel, my Twitch, which it has some VODs. I will probably not be streaming as of the upload of this, but the Thursday coming after this podcast video upload, I will be streaming some more. Don't know what, but, we'll figure it out. Otherwise, that's just going to be me, Funk, or I guess you can just call me Justin, signing off for today. Like I said, let me know if you want to hear anything else. And, also I should mention before I go about having other people on the podcast. Although I don't really intend to, I'll definitely... Like, in terms of intending, I just mean, like, right now, this is sort of just a shoot-the-shit podcast for me. But assuming I do this more, I'll happily look into getting some friends or even just some, associates on here at some point. Or even just someone I've never talked to in common and have nothing in common with. That may be sort of an interesting thing to do. But until then, it's just me. So, If there's anybody specifically you want on, Tyke or Voltroid or even like someone like Dane, just let me know, and I'll see you around.
I'll see you around.
I'll see you around. Bye.